Okay, before we move on to the next question, I'd like to summarize a little bit of what I heard so far. Let me ask you a question. How many people in the audience, can you raise your hands if you are involved in a masjid? Okay, so approximately 50% of the people here are somehow involved in a masjid. Okay, so this assignment is for you. The rest of you who did not raise your hands, your first assignment is to become involved in the masjid. And then your second assignment is now what we're going to talk about. But for those who already raised your hand, good, you're halfway there. Alhamdulillah. So the first task, it is no longer an acceptable excuse that there should be any masjid in America that does not have a public affairs committee or an advocacy committee or an outreach committee. If your masjid does not have one, you need to have one, you need to be in it. Okay? It can have 2 people, 3 people, 10 people, 12 people. If your masjid is big, like his masjid, maybe they should have 20 people, I don't know. But for most masjids, you need between 3 and 10 people. Second, in almost every area in America, even if you are in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, or Podunk, Iowa, there is an interfaith council. Please, for the sake of Allah, send somebody from your masjid to participate in that council. Okay, it's free, they won't charge you. You get to meet like-minded people who are potential allies. At least once a quarter, you should do what Brother Hussam suggested. Bring one of the local elected officials to your masjid. The event, by the way, does not have to be elaborate 6-hour event. It could be something as simple as, hi, I'm the mayor of your village. I'm here after Salatul Jummah to shake hands with people. It could be something that simple. Okay? The event does not have to cost money. It does not have to be very, very difficult. Most political leaders would love to show up at Jummah to say hello, and if out of 200 people in your masjid, 20 of them stay to talk with the mayor for 15 minutes, he will consider that to be fantastic. Okay, most people don't know this. I actually, in one of our mass masjids in Minnesota, we called the legislator and the senator, the House rep and the senator. They both came, and we had 250 people for Jummah. After that, we made an announcement saying the senator is here who wants to talk. 30 people stayed, and they talked for 30 minutes. So I asked the imam, how was the event? He said it was a disaster. Why was it a disaster? Only 30 people stayed. So I called the politician, how was the event? It was fantastic, I was 30 people, they were talking to me. It's a whole different thing. It's actually very simple. Okay? This needs to happen at least once a quarter. It cannot be only when there is a disaster. Okay? And it could be, for example, by the way, if you have a community potluck dinner, politicians love nothing more than to show up at a potluck dinner and shake hands. Please invite them. It is actually that simple. You don't have to do a separate event for them. How many of you know that in California there is something called a day at the Capitol, Muslim Day at the Capitol? Let's see a show of hands. How many of you know there is? How many of you have been to one? You see, that is sad because I'm not from California. Even I have been to a California Day at the Capitol. Yes or no? 2 years ago. That deserves applause, by the way. And I came from Minnesota to attend it. When is the next day at the Capitol?
Next April.
Yeah. So in April 2017, our good brothers in CARE are going to be holding a Muslim Day at the Capitol. Okay? It is inconceivable to me. I showed up at this event 2 years ago, and I found 150 Muslims there. How many Muslims are there in California? 1 million. Where were 999,000?
All of them.
No, I actually would like to see 1 million Muslims take over the state capital in Sacramento and see the politicians deal with it. See, it cannot be, by the way, it is not that complicated. Your representative and senator want to meet with you. If they don't want to meet with you, they should be ashamed, and you should make them want to meet with you. Show up. It is not, by the way, it is completely worth it to take a day off of work to do that. Every masjid has a duty to send somebody at that event. Okay, you have to show up at the capital. Every year a masjid should hold an open house, preferably in Ramadan, but it doesn't matter when. Invite 20, 30, 50, 100 people. Feed them iftar, show them the masjid. This is where we do our salah, that's it. It's not that complicated. Now the last part, the last advice I'm going to give is slightly more complicated than the first ones. These set that I have given can be done by 99% of masjids. It is not that hard. There really is no excuse, by the way. Okay, the last one is a little bit more hard, which is we want non-Muslims to enter a masjid for a non-Muslim reason. For example, some masjids this year have held the polling station was at the masjid. So if you're Muslim, if you're Hindu, you're Christian, you're Jewish, you happen to live in District 3 or 4, your polling station is at the masjid, not at the church. So this gives the masjid non-Muslim traffic. It normalizes the position of the masjid in the community. This concept, by the way, is called Tawteen al-Da'wah, giving the da'wah roots. The da'wah is real, it is here, it cannot be uprooted. Okay? And by the way, it doesn't just have to be a polling station. You could have a forum on Black Lives Matter. You can have a Boy Scout troop. You can have an immigration protest held at your masjid. Okay? It doesn't have to be just masjid only for Muslim issues. Because how many Christian churches are open for Muslim things? So we have to have this way of thinking. And alhamdulillah, half of the people in this room are involved in the masjid. I hope you take this back to your boards to have a serious conversation as to the role of the masjid in preserving the rights of the Muslim community going forward. The next point I would like our esteemed panelists to talk about is the issue of making alliances. Several of you have touched on it, but I want to elaborate on it a little bit more. Who should we be making alliances with? How should we be making alliances? And to what purpose? Maybe you start from there. You want to start?
I'll start from here. I think alliances is the name of the game, especially after the election and with the Trump era, if you will. Well, we don't know how long he's going to last. I like to use his phrase that he always uses, because truly nobody knows what's happening. Nobody knows what the hell is going on, truly. Nobody knows. We could not understand this president, what he is up to. But for us as Muslims, and for others, it seems like coalitions, alliances, is the name of the game. This is our survival is going to be. And it is not just because of minorities, even with white Americans who are also very much concerned. Remember, when you look at the popular vote, actually Hillary Clinton got more popular vote than Donald Trump. He just got the college electoral. And there's a whole lot of talk about, the electoral votes and this and that, but that is besides. When the elections, this is it. We have to be prepared how to deal with it, and how to deal with it is alliances. What does that mean, and who are our alliances? Definitely, the Latino community is one of our alliances. Now, we have to build bridges, we have to work with them, we have to support them, and they have to support us. And alhamdulillah, we have now Latino Muslims who can really take the lead on this one here, because again, right? You have to send someone who speaks the language, not necessarily just the language, but also to understand how to communicate with the people, how to relate to the people. So our Muslim Latinos can help us reach out to the Latino community and form very strong bond, and to work together for the benefit of all, because I tell you what, benefit of immigrants is the benefit of America, because it is the core value of America. As I said, we are the nation of Americans. Number two, African American. Yes, African American, definitely. That is Black Lives Matters, and beyond Black Lives Matters, it is important because they have set the stage for our civil rights. They have endured so much, and now we are benefiting from all their struggles, and now we talk about civil rights. And also now we need to talk about those who are disenfranchised. Donald Trump made his campaign, as the brother said here, for those who have been economically disadvantaged. And we have to reach out to those people and let them know exactly the truth. We stand with them on making equity for everyone economically, but we are absolutely, unequivocally against discrimination against any other minorities or other people. So I think that's the name of the game. How to form, this is a whole lot, another lectures. We have a lot of friends. We are looking forward to see our local activists, to connect them with these organizations that I mentioned. We had a meeting for the board. I serve on the board of Industrial Era Foundation, which is the one that I mentioned. We work on many issues that pertain and concerning American people. They have made a commitment that they will never tolerate any attack on any of the minorities that have been targeted by Donald Trump. Not only that, but they will respond forcefully and without any hesitation, that they will not allow anyone to be attacked during the Trump years. And so we have allies. We need to connect with them, we need to build a relationship with them, and inshallah ta'ala, through our chapters, through CARE and MAS and ICNA and all others, we are working on this on the U.S. Council level, inshallah ta'ala. And we will be connecting our local communities with these groups, because forming these alliances is going to be our first line of defense. I know many of you may not know how to do that, but we will be able to do the training, we will be able to do the meetings with these groups, and they have history of consistent support to Muslims. And I'm telling you, since the 90s, we worked with them, and when 9/11 came, they were there for us. So they are genuine, good-hearted people, on principles, and inshallah ta'ala we will continue the struggle with them. But that's the name of the game, is alliances.
I think in addition to the obvious alliances with various minorities, and I think it is extremely important, and I figured that importance 25 years ago, that's why I married into a Latina. I knew that alliance would be very handy in the future. That was a joke. I'm married to a Latina, but that's not the reason I'm married. But the non-obvious ones, I want to say, because I know these are the obvious ones: minorities, religious minorities, ethnic minorities, civil rights activists, and so on. If we understand coalition building and alliance building from the concept that the Prophet ﷺ explained to us, from what's known as the alliance of virtues, right? The Hilf al-Fadul that the Prophet ﷺ talked about. Which is, he said there was an alliance that existed before Islam, where the tribes will get together. These are idol worshippers, remember, they commit the worst sin on earth, shirk. He said, if I'm invited to the same alliance, which is a gathering of these people to stand against injustice, to stand on the side of those who are oppressed, he said, I will join that. If I'm invited now, after receiving the wahy, the revelation as a Muslim, if I'm invited to join that alliance, I will join it again. Meaning, alliances and coalition buildings involve people we might disagree with on other issues. So we have to, I would say, train ourselves in a way to accept working with people that sometimes would not have been our typical allies on certain issues. Standing against bullying, discrimination, hate crimes. I'm specifically, talking about religious communities, Hindus, that are unusual allies for many. But when it comes to our issues, actually, they are facing similar discrimination. The Sikh community, the Jewish community, the LGBT community. When it comes to issues of bullying, harassment, I know these are issues that are sensitive in our community. And we jump in and say, oh my God, no, we disagree. We don't have to agree on everything. Obviously, we don't agree with the Hindu community or the Sikh community or the other religious communities on theology, but we find common ground. The common ground is every human being deserves dignity. This is an Islamic value. We cannot debate that. Every human being deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. Every human being should have the same access to opportunities and rights. If we all agree on that, then anyone who agrees with that value is our partner in fighting for those values. On other issues we might disagree, and that's fine. Even within the same community we might have disagreements. So that is an important aspect to talk about when we talk about alliances and coalition building. I want to also conclude 30 seconds each. I would say, to put things in perspective, our situation is not as bad as historically other communities had to deal with. Look at what Native Americans had to deal with, African Americans, Latinos, various immigrant groups, Irish Americans, Jewish Americans, and some communities continue to endure injustices. So, putting things in perspective, we have it probably among the easiest of all. Alhamdulillah ta'ala. We have the tools, the means, the alliances to fight back. The last thing I want to say, because probably the last thing we can say before we end and we'll hear from the rest of the esteemed speakers, is let's begin da'wah at a personal level, social level. One, let's make sure we fight racism, bigotry, tribalism, nationalism within our own community. We are a Muslim community, but let's face it. Wallah, I've been in gatherings where someone would speak about another nationality within the Muslim community. We talk about other nationalities. We're not perfect, as our brother Mujahid discovered. We're not all Sahabas or children of Sahabas in our behavior, unfortunately. May Allah make us, inshallah, like them and follow their example. But the reality is, we have to challenge within your own community. If you're sitting at a dinner table and you hear someone say something about Mexicans, about blacks, about Arabs, about Pakistanis, about this group or that group, be the one to say and remind people to say, this is not what Muhammad teaches us. This is not what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches. Right? If your daughter, if your son they come and say, I found a suitable husband or wife for me, and he belongs to the different race, different nationality. He's a good Muslim, she's a good Muslim, but they're from a different race, don't be the one who says, well, it doesn't fit us. But we need to have an Egyptian. It must be a Syrian. It must be Pakistani. You know, we have to put that in the back. This is not acceptable. This is not an acceptable Muslim behavior. Especially, we know from the Prophet's life, the Sahabas, how they intermarried and so on. And last point I want to say, as we're staying here, and these are the last hours we spend at this great convention, blessed convention, inshallah ta'ala, let's make sure, because I did hear some complaints from some of the people who work at the hotels, some of the people who have been serving us to make our stay comfortable at the hotel or at the convention. Show them a smile. Give them a tip. They don't make enough, by the way. So give them a tip as you're leaving. Say, you know what, thank you for cleaning my room. Thank you for serving us breakfast. It was a great. If you don't want to leave a great tip, your smile is the biggest tip. Say, you know, sorry my kids were a little bit rowdy. Sorry we made a mess in the eating area. Thank the staff here. Just let them know. Thank the mass people. You know, a lot of us were in a rush and so on. Many of the people here were volunteers. Give them a smile, say thank you, really appreciate it. You made it comfortable for us. You made it a great experience for us that we want to come back again and again. This is the best da'wah, by the way. And da'wah is not only for others. Da'wah includes for us. Many of the volunteers are your children, my children, the youth of the community. Let them have a great experience the way we had a great experience in the convention.
Thank you, Jazakallah khair, Brother Hussam, for this. These are two great reminders, actually. Much appreciated. Back to the alliances question. Now, we as Muslims, or as Muslim organizations, we have to have certain different categories of alliances, like the very close alliance, like like Black Lives Matter. We have actually now there is a within mass that some groups started the mass Black Lives Matter movement. Which is, I mean, this is as how close we can get to, these brothers and sisters in allowing them our space, and they will allow us, their space in order to collaborate very, very closely. If we're talking about people who agree with us on many, many levels, and to the extent that we will not mind that if they come and open their own, a chapter or or have brochures or have some communication done through our organizations, to come and speak to our congregations after Jumu'ah. And so these are very, very close alliances. There are then the organizations that we agree, of course, on, I don't want to give names. I just gave Black Lives Matter because it's such an obvious example.
1 minute, inshallah.
Sorry, 1 minute, inshallah. So, and there are these, the other organizations that you want to call them issue alliances or coordination on an issue, like, for example, this honorable comment that was made by the ADL Executive Director or Secretary General, I don't know the title. It's such an honorable statement saying, this proud Jew will register as a Muslim if a Muslim registry is started. How much do we disagree with ADL now, right? It's so much. But on this particular issue, okay, let's work together against the idea of instituting any kind of registry for Muslims, for immigrants, for whatever. And the point I want to, because I'd like to finish with is, we will find within our communities people that will resist this. And we have to actually deal with those sincere brothers and sisters with education in order to explain to them that this is actually something the Prophet ﷺ would have done. And we use the wisdom of our scholars to actually educate them. And those who insist on being like an obstacle, I would say you just ignore them and move forward.
This issue of alliances happens naturally and organically when you're authentic with the people who you live with. I don't think we need a class for that. You just need to care. We need to care as a community. We go all around the nation. Islamic Spanish does these weekend workshops where we'll deliver the khutbah on the Friday. One of our instructors and so on, we have different instructors, and we're building leaders from amongst the Latino community, which we need to. If we don't produce leaders, we won't have the workers to be able to take care of the grassroots work. So we usually deliver a khutbah in regards to who we partner with in the Muslim community. This is, coalition building from within. Then that night, one of us talk about how we became Muslim. People love to come. They'll have some food and they'll hear this quote-unquote converse story, but we'll go into the area of what it is that we do and why we're there. On Saturday, we do something called, what do your neighbors think of you and why? And I'll tell you what, no community that I've ever gone to does this workshop not work in regards to how we have it set up. In one point in time, I act like a non-Muslim. And I take the microphone and I walk around. It's a 4-hour workshop or a 2-hour workshop. And I go up to a person there from the audience and say, and I'm acting like a non-Muslim, right? So I live down the street and a colleague that I work with told me, your religion is the true religion. This is interesting because I live down the street. You guys, I don't really know you. Can you explain to me why we haven't talked before? Then I give that person. I tell you, brothers and sisters, Allah's my witness. I've had people in masajid say, well, we're usually busy working. Or we're going to school. Or this and that. Or, the media says I don't know what about us. It's like, no, but I'm not asking you about what the media says. No, I'm asking you, why haven't you come to talk to me? And I give them the microphone again. And we have this, questions that that we ask, and it's there on the actual PowerPoint. All their answers are defending their position. The majority of Muslims defend their position as to why they haven't spoken to someone. And in the end, the very last statement is, if this is the case, then why don't you go back home? And it works every time. Because in the community, it's like, what is this? It's like, do you understand what just happened? Every answer you gave means you don't care. You're not thinking about me as your neighbor and the guy who is asking, why haven't you spoken to me? You're only thinking about yourself regarding why you haven't done that. It's a problem. I don't understand that mentality. Why is this community like this if we have the best deen? These people opened up the doors for you to have your masjid in this neighborhood. You don't go down the street and speak. So my point here is that if this is the way we're dealing with our neighbors in our neighborhood, how are we organically going to deal with people further away from the people we live in? To build coalitions, you have to have people in your city, in your state, in your country, somehow work with you. So I would advise that if masajid and organizations and so on, be very clear about your vision in regards to what you do. And I'll share with you our vision from the IslaminSpanish.org website. Our vision is to see lives transformed into productive global citizens, collaborating for the common good of humanity. That's our vision. And how do we go about doing that? They'll read on that website and it'll say, our process is to provide culturally relevant leadership development and community empowerment by we as Latino Muslims telling our story, building strategic partnerships, and leveraging technology. You know what that has done? They come to us and say, we want to partner with you. And so it was of no amazement from our side how all of a sudden this year we were invited by Obama to go to the White House. We were invited directly. I thought it was a hoax. We got this email. You've been invited by the President of the United States. I said, okay, it has a phone number. Let me see what this is. And I called, and sure enough, right? It was the White House. And part of what they were seeing is that, we were asked by Harvard University to join a program called the Global Leaders Network. So alhamdulillah, I was able to go there and be with about 150 leaders from 120 different countries. And why? Because the media that's disseminating the messaging, they are watching and they're seeing that we have some cohesion. So in Colombia and South America this year, we were part of the discussions internationally from the table in regards to the peace process in Colombia. And we built the first forum in that country, in Latin America, called Muslims as Agents of Peace. Alhamdulillah. MashaAllah. That's so far internationally, but they're watching to see what we're doing here locally. So all of these efforts that we do have potlucks, we do work with the Interfaith Ministries for Greater Houston, which is a huge coalition. And my advice to you, brothers and sisters, is honestly, not to get caught up in regards to the tactics as to how you go about doing it, but more importantly, correct your heart and your intention as to why you do what you do. If you do it for Allah Azza wa Jalla, and you really care about people, as the Shaykh mentioned, the Prophet ﷺ was sent as a mercy to mankind. If we represent this deen, we have to look at people with mercy, and we have to care. And if we do, I'm telling you, people will come knocking on the doors and saying, we would love to be able to work with you, and let's work together for all of this injustice and all these things that people are suffering from, because we're all human beings, and we should be leading the people based on our principles of this deen.
Jazakumullahu khairan. Before we close, I would like to close with this short reminder. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes to us in the Quran a group of Muslims who went through a difficult period of time, more difficult than what we are going through. And He quotes them as they speak about their condition. And they said, وَمَا لَنَا أَلَّا نَتَوَكَّلَ عَلَى اللَّهِ وَقَدْ هَدَانَا سُبُلَنَا. Why should we not rely upon Allah when it is Allah who has guided us to the goodness of our paths? So we have in front of us, and Jazakallah khair for our esteemed co-panelists, who have shown to us the beauty of the path that Islam provides. We are not the first group of Muslims to go through a hardship. The pathway on what to do in difficult times is known to us. And the positive answers can be gotten, and the ways to get to a positive result are known to us. This is a period of time when we do not shy away from our heritage. In fact, this is a period of time when we embrace our Islamic heritage and identity, because our Islamic heritage and identity gives us the path forward. So on this note, I would like to close, and please give one more round of applause to our brilliant co-panelists. Thank you very much. Jazakumullahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.